Hello everybody, welcome back to another Matthew Young Aviator video. Today I'll be showing you the F-18 Hornet. So, let me give you some information about the F-18 Hornet. So, the F-18's first flight was all the way back in 1978, and it was introduced into service first by the US Marine Corps in 1983 and to the US Navy all the way back in 1984. Now, this aircraft is a multi-role fighter, meaning that it can do various types of missions. It can do air-to-air, destroying aerial targets like bombers, enemy fighters, etc. Air-to-ground, destroying ground targets like tanks, bunkers, infantry, etc. Air-seed, destroying enemy air defenses, suppression of enemy air defenses, and even air-to-sea, destroying naval targets. So, with that said, let's hop into the cockpit. Okay, so welcome to the cockpit. So, here in the cockpit, we can split it into a couple main areas. So, let's start. Here, you can see the left console over here. Over here, the left auxiliary panel. Over here is what is commonly referred to as the front dash. Here is the right auxiliary panel. And over here is the right console. So, with that said, I'm going to start explaining the left console. Okay, so here the left console. Let's start out from all the way back here. Here you have the nuclear weapon switch. You'd use it if you have nuclear weapons on board, but in normal missions you wouldn't use it. So, over here we have the mission computer switch. Pretty much the mission computer, it is a computer which stores everything about the mission, like flight plan and stuff like that. And you can isolate one off, normal, or two off. Here you have the hydraulic override switch, a very interesting switch. But now let me just give it to you in the complicated terms. Hydraulic override switch overrides hydraulic line 2B isolation to allow in-flight charging of the APU accumulators. I know you probably didn't understand anything, so let me explain it further. Now, the APU has a sort of accumulator. It is made up of two main fluids, nitrogen gas and hydraulic fluids. It needs them to start it up. Usually, these fluids are refilled by the ground crew whenever you're going to do a takeoff. But if you want to do them in flight, you can take it directly from hydraulic line 2B to sort of recharge the accumulators. That's pretty much what it means. Now over here, a very important switch, OBOGS, Onboard Oxygen Generation System. Very important, because you don't want to die of hypoxia when you're in the middle of a dogfight at 35,000 feet. Pretty much it makes oxygen for you, because when you're very high, there isn't enough oxygen. Look at people who climb Mount Everest. Why do they wear masks with gas tanks? Because there isn't enough air at that altitude to support a human being. Even when you're at low altitudes, you start feeling a bit lightheaded. So imagine at the higher altitudes, you wouldn't survive without it. Now, oxygen flow is how much oxygen is flowing to your mask. Very important. You leave it on most of the time. Over here is the ALE-39 reset. What the ALE-39 is, it is the countermeasure system. For example, if a missile is coming at you, you can release countermeasures. Maybe it will get the missile off you, maybe it will not. It's a reset switch for the ALE-39 system. Over here you have the antenna select. You can choose for the COM1 antenna select, upper, automatic, or lower. And you have for the IFF, identify friend or foe. Down here you can choose antenna upper, both, or lower. You normally leave it on COM1 auto and IFF both. Here it's all about ciphering. So here you have the relay switch for you can put in cipher, called the COM relay switch, cipher off or plain. And here you have the GXMT switch for COM1 off or COM2. Now usually you'd leave them off for now because we're not in the air. It's all about ciphering if you want to cipher anything about communications, etc. So here you have the ICLS. It's the carrier landing system. Now this is, imagine this ILS for airliners for military. It is an ILS. Here you can set it manually. Normally you would set it via here, the up front controller, and here you can set it via the UFC or manually from here. You would normally leave it in the UFC for convenience sake, but if the UFC stops working, you would want to set it manually. And here you have the IFF. Now crypto you can set is for encryption. You put it into hold, normal, or 0, all about encryption. Mode 4, it's the type of IFF that the F-18 uses. It's just the type of IFF. It is of DIS or DIS/AUD, that's how I say them. And here you have the master. You'd normally leave it in normal, but if you need to, you'd put it in master emergency. And now over here you have the volume. You can put it in cold mic or hot mic. Pretty much in hot mic, you'll be able to talk. You normally leave it in hot mic for communications. ICS, everything about cautions. If you're landing on field, ICS alerts you via a small caution warning. Normally it's a small deedle. Everything about cautions in the ICS volume switch. Leave it on a lot, or else you'll have an emergency and you won't know. OWR, very important if you're going to the middle of a battlefield. It's the radar warning receiver. Now, as the name implies, it receives radar pings from other aircraft or missiles who are locking you up. It receives radar pings from them, and the aircraft sort of screams at you to start doing evasive maneuvers, to start dropping chaff and flares, and to do that. This only works for radar guided missiles. For infrared guided missiles, it won't work because you have to spot them visually. But radar guided missiles are the most used types of missile. Infrared type of missiles are pretty much only used in close range, except for one special type of Russian infrared guided missile. Here you have the weapon switch. Pretty much for volume you would have the AIM-9 Sidewinder. It has a growl style sound effect to know that you've locked up a target. Now pretty much you'd hear that growl and you know, oh, I've locked up the target, now I can fire my Sidewinder. Without it you wouldn't know that you've locked him up. And here the mids A and the mids B, pretty much what they are, it's another type of radio communication via the link 16, via data link. You can talk to another person via data link via the mids A and mids B. You have the TACAN. TACAN is a type of navigation. Now what the TACAN does, the volume switch, you can hear the Morse tone of the TACAN, and so you can sort of know what frequency you're on via the Morse tone. And here you have the auxiliary for the volume. Now, down here in FCS, Flight Control System. Let's start from here. Here you have the rudder trim. You can set it to the left or to the right. And here, you can put it to take off. Here you can just reset it like this. Here you have the gain switch, FCS gain switch. Now this is all about flap scheduling. Now if you put it in override, you can pretty much allow custom flap scheduling, while it allows normal flap scheduling for the flaps. So you won't overspeed while extending the flaps. But if you want to set to override, so you can set custom flap scheduling, you can. And you have the FCS reset switch. It sort of resets warnings on the DDIs over here. Now over here also. Now over here you would bring it here. It would reset warnings. FCS reset. Now it will not do it right now because these warnings are currently warnings that will stay there because they're still on. I'll show you how to get rid of these warnings once we get to that area. But if there are warnings that are not applicable at the time, it will not show them. Here you have the fuel switch. Here, actually, let's start up. Extend the probe. So, it will extend a small probe because the F-18 refuels via a sort of probe and drogue type chute. It doesn't refuel via the boom chute. So if you want to aerial refuel with a tanker, you would bring that out, and that's what the probe does. And here you can do an emergency extension. I will not do it. Here, for the external tanks, you can choose which you want to drain first. If you want to drain, for example, the center or the wing tanks first, or else if you just leave them in normal. So these are the external tanks over here. If you want to drain one of them first, here you have a fuel dump. Now you would say, why would you want to dump fuel? Very simple. Let's say you just took off with a lot of fuel. Well, you have a small issue. Your engine flames out and you want to come in for a landing, because you're not going to fly with one engine on a mission. You just won't survive. So you turn around, but you're too heavy to land, so you can dump your fuel to land safely. Now over here, if I just push the throttle a bit forward, over here is the internal wing, still in the fuel section. If you want to inhibit the filling of the internal wing tanks, battle damage or whatever you need it to, you can. Okay, come back. Now over here you have the APU and the engine crank. APU stands for auxiliary power unit. You can just turn it on. It will provide the aircraft with power because it's a small engine, and also bleed air. And you can use it to start up your engines. Engine crank left, engine crank right, engine crank right, engine crank left. You can start up your engines in that way. You need the APU for that, to start up your engines. Imagine it as the ignition for your car. Now over here, let me push the throttle again. Excuse me, I was just setting some settings on my throttle. Here you have these strobe lights. Now with these strobe lights, you can put them to bright, dim, or off. They're a strobe to let other airplanes know that you are there. Yeah, that's because I set my throttle back to idle. Here you have the position lights. Now let me show you them from outside. Here are the position lights, so other aircraft know your position. This side is red, and this side is green or turquoise or whatever you would call that color. And now the formation lights. Now you would come out. This side over here are the formation lights, and this side same color. They're not. They're always green, turquoise, blue, the light blue, whatever shade you would call them. And over here you have quite an interesting switch, the Gentai switch. Now, pretty much all it is about, now when you have the two generators, they normally tie together for the left engine and the right engine. They'll be tied together. But if there's a fault, they will sort of untie together. The plane will automatically try to tie them back together unless there's been a huge fault. And if there's that, you can just put it to reset and try to tie them back together yourself. So over here, ground power. If you want to do a ground power startup, well, you have to enable some of these switches for whatever reason, because 99 out of 100 times you use the APU. But if you need to ground power start, if you want to, you can. And here you have the fire. You can test track A or test track B. So let me test track A first.
Engine fire left. Engine fire left. Engine fire right. Engine fire right. APU fire.
Okay.
APU fire. Bleed air left. Bleed air left. Bleed air right. Bleed air right.
Okay, so now that we've tested the fire, now when you do the fire, it will come up with this air left bleed off and right bleed off. Now we give it a few seconds and we can do test B, maybe around 10, 20, 30 seconds, and you can do test B. So test B should be exactly like test A.
Engine fire left.
There we go.
Engine fire left. Engine fire right. Engine fire right. APU fire. APU fire. Bleed air left. Bleed air left. Bleed air right. Bleed air right.
So as you can see, test B is exactly like test A. So that is the left console done. After this, I want to explain the left auxiliary panel. Okay, so continuing on to the left auxiliary panel. Here we have the hook bypass. So first of all, what is a hook? The hook is this hook over here, which uses to sort of latch on to those cables over there to be able to land on an aircraft carrier, because without it you would not be able to land, considering that the aircraft carrier is such a small runway. Although being one of the largest ships in the world, it's still small compared to a normal field. So in field mode, when you're going to be landing on an airfield, the AOA indexer light, which is this, I will explain what it is later. The AOA indexer lights will be operating normally. While in carrier mode, if you have the tail hook up, it will show that the tail hook is up and that you need to put it down. That's pretty much the hook bypass. It doesn't alter the hook behavior in any way. That's a common misconception. It doesn't change the hook behavior in any way. Here you have the brake pressure in thousands of psi. You use it to check on the brake pressure for startup, etc. Here you have the emergency brake or the parking brake. So to turn on the emergency brake, you just pull it outwards. That's the parking brake. To pull on the emergency brake, to enable it, you just do that. You put it back in. To turn the parking brake, you pull it out. Now you have the parking brake. Now you can put it like this, and put it in, or just do that and put it in like this. Right now it's not enabled. So let me put it back to here. Over here you have the landing light or the taxi light. Now it's a landing light or a taxi light over here on the nose. So it's just a light. Here you have the anti-skid. You use it to stop the airplane from skidding. It alters the brake's behavior in a certain way to make the aircraft not be able to skid. Here you have the launch bar. So let me extend it. Over here you have the launch bar at the front. The launch bar, when you're going to go do a takeoff from a carrier, over here you have the catapult. The catapult will sort of latch onto the launch bar and pull the aircraft. It throws the aircraft off the carrier, and it uses the launch bar to do that. That's why the launch bar is there. And here you have the flaps. So let's put it in half. Half you'd use them for a takeoff normally. Full, you'll use them for a landing. And automatic, you would the aircraft would change them according to your speed, but not for takeoff or landing, just for regular flight. And here you have the selective jettison. So here you can do the left fuselage missile, which the left and right fuselage missiles are right over here next to the fuel tank over there. If you can see this small little sort of semicircle, which he calls the missile. Same thing for this side. And then you have the racks, the rack launchers. Let's say you loaded like a couple of bombs and they're on a rack. Well, pretty much how it works, you drop the bombs and then the rack is just empty. You don't need the rack. Like, it's not that expensive, and it's just a waste of, fuel. It's a waste of space. It's a waste of, it makes the plane heavier. You just don't need the rack. So if you're done with the rack, well, you can just throw it away. And then you have the stores, which you can choose from here, the station selector. I'll explain what it is later. Up here you have the landing gear, so you can do up or down. Like now it's down, and here you have the landing gear lights. I'll explain later. And here you have the canopy jettison because if for some reason you want to jettison the canopy over here, well, you could do that. So that's it for the left auxiliary panel. Now I want to continue onto the front dash. Okay, so continuing on to the front dash here, we'll start from down here. So over here you have the station select. You can select which stations you want to do. You want to jettison via here if you go to stores, and you can be able to jettison which ones you want. Center is the center tank over here, which is over here. Left inner or LI and RI and right inner are these two over here, and RO and LO are these two, left outer and right outer over here. So now down here you will see a small triangle, two triangles. So this is this triangle and there is this triangle. The top triangle is for the gears, so it will show you, for example, the nose gear, the left gear, and the right gear, landing gear, are down. If there is a fault, it will show that one of them is not down, etc. The bottom is for the flaps. So this is half flaps, this is full flaps, and the one on the bottom is for any faults. So that's the station select. Now over here you have the IFE, which will show you time, fuel, and some engine parameters. You can change the mode via the mode button, the quantity of which tanks it wants to show you, change the bingo with the arrow keys, change the zone to Zulu time, and start a stopwatch. Now you can do this, you can press it once so the stopwatch will sort of pause, but it will continue in the background. And if you want to stop it for good, just do a long press. Over here you have the brightness for the IFE. And over here here are some parameters for the video. So HMD, helmet mounted display, which is over here. I'll explain what it is in a minute. LDDI for the left DDI and right DDI, the HUD, the LDIR, and the RDDI, the right DDI, and then manual if you want to do the video recording, off, or automatic. I will not record a video because we will not be doing anything in this flight. Okay, so now over here we get to the emergency jettison. If you want to jettison some of your weapons, it will not jettison all of them, but some of them. You can just push it to make your plane lighter and be able to just run away. Okay, now here you have the master arm. It is very important for you to put it in arm when you want to do a sort of, when you're going to shoot a weapon. So I'll leave it in safe because it's not safe to leave it in arm on a carrier on the deck. Now you can push air to ground, and you can choose, for example, something from the left DDI. I'll explain how the left DDI works later. Or air to air, and then you'll have the radar over here. So these is the air to ground and the air to air. Here you have the fire extinguisher push button, and up here you have the another fire extinguisher push button for the left engine. You can also turn off the cover, and here you have the master caution lights. So you can have a caution reset button, just push it to reset. Here you have some advisory lights, and here you have some more advisory lights. This button is for the APU fire, so if the APU is on fire. And here is the right engine, for the right engine. Here is IR cool. Now this is done automatically when you choose the AIM-9X side, the AIM-9 side when it's not the X variant by force. And you can put it to normal to start cooling the infrared normally. And you'd usually just leave it on off because there's no real usage for it a lot. Now you have the HMD, the helmet mounted display. It's pretty much, imagine it as a HUD, the heads up display, but on your helmet. You need to have this though especially installed into your aircraft. You can look around and you'll see a HUD, you'll see that. And here you have a very important button, the spin recovery switch. So if you're spinning, and they don't know how to recover, well, you can just flip the switch and you will no longer spin. It was a very real issue for the F-14 because pilots would get into flat spins and would die. So they added this in the F-18. Here you have the standby instruments. Here you have the horizon indicator. Here you have the standby radar warning receiver. Here you have your speed, the altimeter, and here you can set your barometric and your vertical speed. So now over here you will have the HUD symbology. This is the HUD symbology. So normally if the normal, you can remove one of some parts. So now some parts, as you can see, can be removed, and you can remove even more to make it sort of a little less cluttered, but you would leave it on normal. Here you have the HUD symbology brightness. Here you have the day and night, so if it's night you can lower the brightness for the HUD. And these three are for the nav flare, which is pretty much it is an AT flare, but for the HUD. The AT flare is a type of pod which is sort of a camera pod, but it will project it onto the HUD. So you can set the black level, you can set for the recording of a video of the nav flare, and you can select the balance for the nav flare. Now you can set the brightness for the AOA indexer lights, which are up here. You can select where the altitude switch will take it via radar or barometric, altimeter, and you can choose the attitude, whether it will take it from standby instruments, automatic, or INS. Now, continuing on the AOA, it will show you the AOA, and there's something called on-speed AOA to show you if you're on that while landing on a carrier. And now, finally, I'm going to go into the DDIs. So these two DDIs are similar, but this on the bottom one, you will not call it a DDI. It is an AMPCD. That's what it is called. Why? Well, because it has color. So I'm just going to turn off its color like that. So here you have the DDI. Here you have the brightness and the contrast, and here you can set it to day, night, or off. I will not set it to off. And then here you have the push buttons. You can select this push button, you can select this push button. These are just push buttons which you can use to interact with the aircraft. So I'll go to the HUD, for example. Now over here this operates in exactly the same way, and down here you have the AMPCD. The only difference is that it has color. It also has gain, the gain switch, which you can use for brightness, and the contrast switch up, down. It doesn't have these, it has this. Here you can set a heading switch on the HSI, so you'll see it more clearly. This switch up here is the heading switch, and this is the course switch, which you would use in an ACLS landing, an automatic carrier landing system landing. So you have the brightness. Here you have the push buttons as well. You have the symbology switch up or down, and the day-night brightness switch like that. Now over here you have the upfront controller. It is very important. A lot of your waypoint inputting will be done via here. So here you can select comms 1 and comms 2, channel comms 1, comms 2 by scrolling. Here you can set the autopilot, for example attitude, hold, etc. IFF. Now the autopilot, I'll explain them in another video one time. TACAN, which is a navigation Type of navigation, ILS for the channel, data link, turn it on, and go into the other page, turn it on. Data link, there are 2 pages. This is for an ACLS landing and automated carrier landing system. This is for actual data link. And then for the beacons, and here just on or off. Here you can choose ADF1 or ADF2, etc. Now down here you have the RW or the ALR 67. It will run a small bit when you turn it on. Like that small noise when you turn it on. Here you have the ALR 67, and here you have the ECM. Pretty much what it is electronic countermeasures. It will sort of try to jam other aircraft. Normally you would set it in receiving. When you're getting locked up, it will receive it, and then once you when you're getting locked up or have a missile fire, that you set it to exmit or emit, to start emitting. You can jettison the ECM, and here you have dispenser bypass. So right now it's off. Now dispenser is pretty much it dispenses chaff and flare out of the aircraft. If you turn it on, you can set its settings via the EW page from here. Right now it's going under a test. If you just wait for it, here it is. So now you can arm it. You will see some information. You can set it, etc. And then you can just put the bypass to do it manually, so you don't need any sort of if you don't want to program it. And here you have the cabin pressure altimeter, the altitude. Excuse me. Here you have the cabin pressure, what is the pressure of the aircraft. And here you have the auxiliary release switch. You can put it to norm or enable. So that's it for the front dash. I will now explain the right auxiliary panel. Okay, so now onto the right auxiliary panel. Let's start out over here. So here we have the right louver. Pretty much it can redirect the air onto the pilot. There's another one on the left side, or the left auxiliary panel. So yeah. Now onto the hook. So the hook over here, there's we can extend the hook. You have the hook lever, and over here you have a small light which lights up hook. Whenever it is not in the up position, so if it is transitioning from down to up, up to down, or it is down, it will light up. When it is not, it will not light up. So you know that the hook is down. Here we can spread our wings. And then once spread, we can lock them like this. Let me fold them. You cannot lock them folded. That's something to note. Only when you do this. Now here, you have the BUNO number, the BUNO, however you want to call it. Imagine it as the ID card of the aircraft, the serial number of the aircraft. So whenever repairs happen, they will know which aircraft that is that has that BUNO number. Over here you have the radar altimeter. Pretty much it sends down a radar beam at the ground, so you will know how far off the ground exactly at that terrain, how far off the ground exactly you are. And now, do you see this little small white arrow over here, sort of? You can change it. That's pretty much when you're below that, the aircraft will scream at you. So you get higher, so you don't die, because you slam to the ground, because you experience kinetic energy. You can do this. You can also push to test it, like so. But whenever you are below this number, you can set it from here. The aircraft will not like it. Here you have the hydraulic pressure. So pretty much it's in thousands of psi for the hydraulics. You want to keep it in the white area over here. Here you have the advisory illuminator lights over here, which will advise if anything is wrong. And here you have the avionics cooling. So in normal mode, the avionics air will cool all the systems, but in emergency mode only some of the avionics I recall some of the systems, while other systems will be cooled by the ram air. Normally you'd leave it just in normal mode. So that's about it for the right auxiliary panel. Now we'll go on to the right console. Okay, so now on to the final part of the cockpit, the right console. So over here you have a voltage of the battery. You have the utility, which is what is normally used, and the emergency voltage, which is what is used in case of emergency. Here we have the left generator and the right generator switches. If you want to turn them off or on, you can. Pretty much it is for each engine you have a generator which produces energy. And here you have the battery. And on, it is just on, and off. If you want to do a shutdown, you would turn it off, and then override. If there is a fault in the battery and it switches to the emergency battery, you can override that and keep it on the normal battery, the utility battery. ECS, that is Environmental Control System. It doesn't solve climate change, sadly, but it does solve climate change inside of your cockpit. So you can set the mode. You can set it to automatic, manual, or off, or /RAM mode. Pretty much you could set it to do it automatically, manually, or you can just leave it off. Here you have the temperature. You can set it to hot or cold. Hot or cold. You have the cabin pressure over here. So you can set it to normal, dump, or ram/dump. The cabin pressure, what it is, pretty much you'll have the pressure of the air. You have the cabin is pressurized so that you don't die of hypoxia. Because if you don't have the cabin that's pressurized, well, you don't have enough oxygen inside of your cabin, and you will die. Excuse me. So here you have your anti-icing for the pitot tube. Now, first of all, the pitot tube, what it is a small tube that gives you readings about your instruments, like attitude, speed, etc. If it is frozen over, however, you will not be able to get an accurate reading, and the FCS will fault, and this may cause you to crash. It has happened to airliners before. So if you can leave it on automatic, or you can just turn it on if you want to do it manually. Here you have the anti-ice for the engines. If you want to de-ice your engines, to start your anti-ice because you don't want to damage your engines due to ice, you can turn it to on, or you can just test it if you need to. And now here you have the bleed air. With right off, it will only take bleed air from the left engine. Off, it will not take bleed air from any engine. Left off, it will take on from the right engine, and normal, it will take from both. So, something to note, here on the DDI, there is a lack of a warning, a certain warning. Let me do the fire test. Here's the warning. The left bleed, the right bleed off. Well, if we do a 360, like that, well, it's no longer there. So that's something to note, that if you start to do a 360 with the bleed air, it will turn that warning off. Here you have the internal lights. Here you can select the consoles to brighten them, the instrument panel, the flood, they're all the same. And you can even see the flood over here. You have the warning/caution lights as well, which you can select the brightness of the warning/cautions. Now something here, you can select the test. Here it will test every single sort of button, every single possible light. It will turn it to test, and it will test it, making sure that every single button works, every single lighting works. So you make sure that you don't have anything off. You have the mode. You can set it to day, night, or NVG. NVG, as far as I know, stands for night vision goggles. Night stands for night, and day stands for day. Now onto the sensors. Now the sensors, over here you have the FLIR. Now what the FLIR is, you have an AT FLIR or the lightning bolt. Imagine them as cameras, which you can use to look at the target, lock onto a target, and then you can designate them for targeting, and then you can drop a bomb on them, for example. So if you're going to turn it on to standby, it will sort of warm the FLIR up, and it will pretty much make the FLIR operational. If you turn it on, it will make it fully operational, but standby will just turn it on, but it won't make it operate. Right now we have no FLIR, so I'll turn it on off. LTDR stands for Laser Target Designate. Pretty much you can designate a target with a laser. You can fire a laser at them to fire, say, a Maverick, a laser guided weapon, a Maverick, at a target, for example, and then it will follow the laser and will hit the target square on. That's how the LTDR works. You need to put it into ARM, but since we have no FLIR, it will not work. And LC/NFLR. That stands for Laser Target Spotting, and then this is for navigation. Something about navigation. Pretty much it is for laser spot targeting. Laser target spotting. Sorry. Laser spot track. Sorry. Now here you have the radar. Pretty much the radar is you lock something in the air or on the ground, and then you can fire something at them. You lock them up, you take the coordinates. If they're a ground target or if they're an air target, you can just fire a missile at them. Because actually the F-18 has an air-to-sea and an air-to-ground radar. And now the INS. The INS stands for the Inertial Navigation System. Imagine it as GPS, but for an aircraft. CV and GND are for two modes of sort of doing a startup. CV for carrier and GND for ground. And then you have all these modes. But the most you'll use are nav, IFA, and off when you're going to shut down the aircraft. And over here on the KY-58, you have the mode. This is all about encryption. It's a type of radio, an encrypted radio. So you can select the mode, either P, C, L, D, etc. The volume, this is the power select knob, on, off, on, or TD. And here you have the fill button. The fill select knob, you can select one of the buttons. Here you have the FCS bit switch. FCS, as I explained before, is flight control system, and then bit stands for built-in test. When you are starting up, you will have to test the flight control system and make sure that the flight control system actually works. Now over here you have the windshield, the anti-ice. If ice is starting to build up on your windshield, you can turn it on and it will sort of try to de-ice. And here you have the fog. Pretty much it will pump up a bit of air to sort of defog. It works similar to a car onto the windshield. And now for the last two pieces. Here you have the ejection seat, safe/armed. Right now it's safe, so I cannot eject. If I pull this handle over here, right now it is armed, since you can see the armed. And here you have the manual override for the ejection seat. You can pull it or push it, and it is for the ejection seat. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching my video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit the notification bell, because soon I might be posting another F-18 video. Thanks for watching, and goodbye for now.